It's always been a big part of my life. You know, looking good is something that was instilled in me as a little kid. You know, my mom was a competitive bodybuilder, so she was very into how she looked. And I was actually raised, basically, the outer shell is very important, you know, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
People focus on role models. It is more effective to find anti-models, people you don't want to resemble when you grow up. Rich Piana was a central figure in the 2010s in the online fitness community, particularly YouTube, incredibly popular. That is until he dropped dead at the age of 46. He is but one of many tragic deaths within this community in which men risk their lives to become as big as possible. Now, it's not as if YouTube and social media birthed this phenomenon. Bodybuilding existed far before that, and it's been a kind of death cult ever since these drugs were first made available to the men that were inclined to risk their lives in pursuit of these aesthetic ideals. You can find dozens of examples of men dropping dead in their prime, and others having gone through major heart surgeries like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, a decade on, the pursuit of aesthetic perfection has morphed into something else. The bodybuilding scene obviously still exists, but we have this new phenomenon now, the Looksmaxxing phenomenon, which is what we're going to talk about today. So before we talk about the present, let's just do a little bit of history. As mentioned, there were the online fitness gurus and experts and bodybuilding people that became popular on platforms like YouTube. But along with that, around the same sort of time frame, there was also this rise of the PUA community and the red pill scene. The PUA community basically gave birth to the red pillers, and they were these guys that were interested in dating, and they were a kind of tinkerer. They just were these empiricists that experimented and kept what worked and gave up the rest. And they became popular for their methods and strategies that allowed them to seduce women. Later, these practical strategies were merged, combined with evo-psych theory from people like David Buss. And some people went further than that and then became political, entered the political realm, and that sort of gave birth to this red pill stuff. But fundamentally, the red pillars were about basically anyone, if you're driven and you practice and learn these various strategies to become charismatic and interesting, you can punch above your weight. You can seduce women that are desirable to you, have success where you formerly didn't. So the red pillars were dominant for some time, but at some point, this other group came along, the black pillars. And they pushed back, claiming that no, all this self-help stuff you guys advocate is nonsense. And that fundamentally, it's about how you look. And it doesn't matter how much game you have, how many different PUA strategies you can implement. If you don't look good, if you're not tall, if you don't have this chiseled jaw, it doesn't really matter. That is the defining determinant of your success in the dating world. And so this emphasis on looks, I think, was in part driven by the data that was flowing out of the dating apps. We entered this sort of big data era, and from these apps, they had so many users, they had millions of data points that they could draw upon and identify these various patterns that appeared to reinforce some of the earlier evopsych theory that was already out there. And it wasn't particularly encouraging and lended some support to this perspective of the black pillars, that there appears to be this big emphasis on looks, and there's this highly asymmetrical sorting that is occurring when it comes to men and women and who they choose to select, most men being left out in the cold. And the remaining men having almost unlimited options, with the majority of the women on these platforms. So this black pill phenomenon maybe it sort of also coincided with this kind of doomerism or inceldom, which has allowed some men to justify just giving up, saying that this is a rigged game, why bother? I'm not going to bother learning this jester PUA stuff where I just have to be a clown to entertain a woman and then she's going to reject me anyway, perhaps because I don't meet these physical standards. So then, perhaps an offshoot of that is the Looksmaxxing, where in a sort of roundabout way, the Looksmaxxers have combined both the red pill stuff and the black pill stuff in a way, in that they accept the black pill's view that it's about looks, but at the same time, they don't believe that it's just all determined at birth. They still believe in self-improvement, and they believe that you can manipulate your looks in a certain way to gain an advantage. And so in that way, they're more in line with the red pillars, in that they still believe that self-improvement is possible, and you can actually influence or have an impact on your success, and it's not just all predetermined by genes. I commend these guys for not wanting to give up, and that there's nothing wrong with self-improvement as a whole versus just entering this life of isolation. Now, when it comes to the methods, though, that these Looksmaxxers are implementing, this is where it gets kind of concerning. Just recently, some of these prominent Looksmaxxers were interviewed on 60 Minutes Australia. One of them is asked about if he has any role models. Who does he mention?
Would you say you have a strong male or perhaps female role model in your life?
I would say that Rich Piana would be one of the biggest content creators that I would watch growing up, and I really liked one of his sayings, "Whatever it takes." So that's usually what I'll reference, and that's sort of what went into a lot of my mentality.
Rich Piana. The guy that dropped dead after abusing his body for years on these various drugs. And what is the guy that was interviewed doing? This prominent Looksmaxxer. He's taking copious amounts of drugs to attain this aesthetic ideal. Now, they may not be the same drugs, but nonetheless, he's taking some significant risks that appear to have just landed him in hospital. Lucky for him, he seems to have recovered promptly, but clearly there's some cause for concern here. And so again, I'm sympathetic to these guys wanting to give themselves the best opportunities they can, but at what cost? Now, there's another guy that was interviewed in this 60 Minutes piece, and he talks about his upbringing and school life, and he argues basically that in a way, high school, real life is just an extension of high school, and that high school is a kind of microcosm of real life. And he references or intimates that his high school years were not that fun due to how people perceived him. And so now he's making this effort to correct that, compensate for that, so that he doesn't feel that way, have to feel left out again. And this is perhaps one of my major concerns with the Looksmaxxing things. And just maybe to zoom out for a moment, I know a lot of men, a lot of people, but a lot of men in particular, young men, they've developed a very negative association with therapy and psychology as a whole, and I'm completely sympathetic to that. My profession has done a terrible job at managing its reputation and has advocated a lot of idiotic ideas that have harmed a lot of people. Nonetheless, this is where some psychotherapy or psychology, introspection can benefit you. Because if you don't understand what is motivating you here, then you can end up going down this path to ruin, like a lot of these bodybuilders, and like perhaps some of these Looksmaxxers in the future. So to return to this guy that talks about his high school experience, this is my concern. Among other things, undoubtedly there's some historical stuff that will be relevant to these guys and why they're drawn to this particular subculture. Not to say that it's all bad, just as the PUA or dating scene, red pill scene, it's not all bad. It's good and bad to it. I want to be even-handed. But the concern I have is that this whole Looksmaxxing phenomenon, it's a kind of humiliation ritual. It is a response to being rejected from the cool table. You're rejected from the cool table for something you couldn't control, which is how you look. And feeling humiliated and ashamed, you're now risking your life to earn a place at that table, so you no longer feel left out, and so that you finally feel this sense of acceptance. I recognize that that's highly speculative, and I can't talk about any one specific person. I'm not going to do that. But that's a general sense I have. And the danger with that, if that is the case, is that even if you succeed, you may end up feeling resentful anyway and discontented. And this is some of what I've seen from some of these Looksmaxxer guys, that now they're popular and successful, they are now, in a sense, disgruntled with the fact that these people, and often women, want to be around them simply because of how they look or because they're popular. But that's what you wanted, isn't it? So this is the tricky thing. When you emphasize this, I won't say shallow, because I recognize that appearance does matter and it is correlated with health, and from an evolutionary standpoint, it matters. So I won't be so flippant as to say it's just this shallow obsession. But at the same time, if that's a foundation, it's a very fragile foundation. And if your relationships are being founded upon that, then you're in this very tricky situation for both men and women. Maybe women more so, because take a woman, for example, that's very beautiful, and she knows she's beautiful, and she knows that the man she's with has chosen her for that reason. But she doesn't have much of anything else to offer him. Well, odds are, if she's attractive, then there are other attractive women that may also be interested in that man. So why shouldn't he replace her if he finds a woman that's 1%, 10% more attractive? You're on very shaky ground here. Now, men may say, well, men, we can stretch out our looks for a longer period of time. We have a larger window to take advantage of it. Okay. But still, it's somewhat relative in that there's a new class of men that are handsome that are potentially going to outshine you, even if you still look good at your age, but not compared to them. So a woman may feel inclined to replace you as well. And eventually, entropy is going to get you. Because unless David Sinclair and his ilk succeed with this longevity project, making us all immortal, you're going to age, and those looks are going to fade, and what's going to be left over? I know men are not terribly fond of fiction these days, and again, I don't blame you. But it might serve you to pick up a copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray. It seems like every generation, unfortunately, at least a subset of each generation has to relearn the pitfalls when it comes to vanity and an emphasis on appearance. Do you want to be valued for that? Because again, if you are, that's the foundation. You're in a fragile situation where you can be replaced. And once those things fade, would you not rather have cultivated some other honorable traits? So to wrap up, this is not to denigrate or attack any one person in this community. And again, I have admiration for people that are pursuing self-improvement. But why are you doing it is the question. What is motivating you? Is it driven by resentment, prior shame, humiliation that you're trying to now compensate for? And what happens if you succeed? You've created this expectation in your mind that this is going to make me more contented. Will it? So do you want to have a role model or an anti-model? When it comes to the fitness world and this Looksmaxxing thing, they may serve you better as anti-models. I will end with a final aphorism from Nassim Taleb. Fitness is certainly the sign of strength, but outside of natural stimuli, the drive to acquire fitness can signal some deep, incurable weakness.